Hey y'all. Hey, happy Tuesday. I'm Marie Deveaux. This is my channel. Welcome to High Tides with Marie. My company is called High Tides Consulting, and I named it that because a rising tide lifts all boats. And I do believe that when people work intentionally on themselves, on improving who and how they are in the world, that creates ripples. And of course, 75% of the globe is water, so that can make a huge change, right? But welcome to the Resonant Leader. I actually started this series, um, last year on LinkedIn. And I started doing a LinkedIn Live series because it is the easiest way for me to make content is having conversations. I often say that my whole world, if I could afford it to be, would just be talking about interesting ideas with interesting people. So I started a LinkedIn Live series last year and just invited all of my favorite light workers and people who work in the leadership space into conversation with me. And I did that for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 episodes on LinkedIn Live. And it turns out I accidentally started a podcast. And so people said you should just put it on YouTube. So this year, we decided to put it on YouTube for a number of reasons. One being, of course, that LinkedIn has gotten really weird. I am a Black creator, a Black thought leader, and as has been the trend of late, my content does not get promoted. It does not get the same reach that it once did. And also, LinkedIn's gotten really noisy because people realized the metaverse is dying. And so they jumped onto LinkedIn. And so it has gotten kind of slimy in the way that a lot of social media gets slimy. So all of that to say, the Resonant Leader is now on YouTube. And we're really glad to be here because, of course, YouTube is one of the last places where creators are really upvoted based on what people want to hear. But on this channel, I talk about communication. I talk about leadership. I talk about relationships and the things that make people feel good about working with other humans and doing good work in the world. So that's what we're up to. And if that sounds good to you, one way that you can help support this channel, help support me, a Black-owned, women-owned business owner, is to like and subscribe to this channel. So I'm going to do that thing where I tell you to do those things, right? Like this video, it's totally free to do. You can subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but is a way that you can support me, support a real living human Black woman creator in the world doing good work and trying to run a business and support my family. So thanks for that. Today, the topic is listening for alignment. And I'm really excited to talk about this idea. This is going to be a solo episode. So you get me uncut, unfiltered, all on my lonesome, talking through some ideas. I often teach this content either in facilitated workshops or with executive coaching clients. I'm really excited to give you some of the nuggets, kind of a behind the scenes of how I think about these concepts. And I actually, on the topic of listening for alignment, this is something I actually just taught at the University of Dayton for their Women Lead program. I do a lot of teaching for women's leadership programming and rising leadership programs. And so this was a topic for them, and we talked about it through the lens of creating influence. And one thing that I shared there, which I will share with you as well, is that people decide how much they can trust you based on how well you listen to them. Right? So it has very little to do, trust has very little to do with what you say to people and everything to do with how well you were able to listen. And that, of course, is because all most people want in the world is to be seen and be heard, right? People become vulnerable, they express themselves, they open up themselves when they know that they are being seen and fully acknowledged in the fullness of who they are and the fullness of their personhood, which means the best leaders are the ones who allow others to be heard more than they push for themselves to be heard, right? So it's not about what you say, it's about how you listen. And so that is something that we're going to dig into today in this conversation. Now, comments are live. This is a live stream if you're catching it live. And so I do want to encourage you, you can drop your comments into this video. I will see them. I will respond to them real time if you're joining real time. If not, and you're catching the replay, still drop your comments, right? That tells the algorithm that this was useful, interesting content. And I will actually still respond to those things. It just won't be live. It just won't be in real time. Okay, so still do that. I have so much that I want to share on this topic, but I'm going to try to keep to 3 main points. The first being that listening for alignment. What is that? And we're going to talk about that really through the lens of content and context in order to find the truth. So I want to break that down for you all. I'm also going to be sharing some ideas about this concept I like to call polydialectal awareness. So really understanding how multiple contexts can appear in the same conversation at the same time and amongst different people. So what does that mean to be aware of polydialectal conversations where multiple people are talking from different vantage points in different dialects? So even if we're having a conversation in the English language, people could still be saying things and speaking in various dialects or variations of that language, which is always grounded in context. So how do we become more aware of when that's happening and tune our ear to that? And the third thing that I want to explore, one of my favorite things as a coach, is level 3 listening. And this is a concept that's brought to you by the Coactive Training Institute. They are one of the best coach training programs out there. And level 3 listening is really how you can listen to be aware of some of those dialects, right? In terms of being polydialectal, but it's also listening to more than content and context, and even goes like a level higher. So we're going to explore that today as well. So those are the 3 things I want to get to. I will tell you there will be tangents in this conversation. I'm going to try to stick to those 3 things. I do have some notes to try to keep me on track, but if I veer off, if you're watching live, you can try to bring me back. I will try to bring myself back. But I think in spider webs, not straight lines. So come on this journey with me. And like I said, one way that you can support this content is by liking this video. Comment if anything that I'm saying is resonating, or if something strikes you as particularly interesting, that's really useful. And of course, please subscribe because that helps this content grow and reach more people who need it. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a story. Okay. I am a Black woman living in the United States, USAN, if you will. And I am also of Caribbean descent. My parents, were both from the Caribbean. My mom is 100% Jamaican. My dad is Bahamian, which explains the last name, Deveaux. No, I am not Haitian. To all my Haitian friends out there, I know you're so sorry for me. I love you all, but no, Deveaux is actually a Bahamian name. And I also married a Jamaican man, 100% Jamaican man who was born in Jamaica. And so when I go and see my mother-in-law, there's a lot of patois in their house. I do not speak patois. I can understand a good amount, but I do not speak patois. Which is one, I think, component of how she shows up in her communication, right? As a Jamaican who speaks patois. Another element that you need to know about this story I'm telling you is, of course, my mother-in-law is of a different generation than I am. If you can't tell, I am an elder millennial, right on the cusp, sometimes referred to as a zennial, right? In between the X and the Y of our generational cutoffs. But my parents, my husband's parents, are baby boomers. And so one thing that I always find really interesting with the baby boomer crowd is how they communicate. There doesn't seem to be a lot of emotional fluency in their communication. They are also not ones to actively ask for help or be really emotionally expressive, which is also good context for this story. Let's see, what else do you need to know about me in terms of how I communicate? So I grew up in California. I'm from the Bay Area. Yay, right? So from San Jose. And then I went to school in New York. So I lived in Brooklyn for 20 years, which I have found makes me a pretty direct communicator. I tend to have a very laid back spirit, but a very direct, forward way of communicating. And so that tends to come out when I'm in conversation with people. But in the story, me and my beautiful Zennial genius with my California, Brooklyn mashup way of being was visiting my mother-in-law in Florida. And it was me, my husband, and our 2 kids were passing through Florida en route to my brother's child-free wedding. So we were dropping off our kids. Shout out to all the caregivers and grandparents out there who watch our kids when we want to go have adult playtime. But I'm dropping off my kids and I'm at her house, and her house is not clean, which already just culturally is kind of strange to be in a Jamaican household and for it not to be clean. Even when things are not tidy or organized, things are clean. And so it was a really strange experience being in her house at this particular time. Her house was not clean. And so I'm sitting down with this woman and I'm just kind of catching up with her, trying to figure out like what's going on. I hadn't seen her in a while. And she's telling me, oh my gosh, like I just had surgery on my hand not long ago. And it's really swollen. I have so much shooting pain when I go to wipe the countertops or go to sweep the floor. I just get shooting pain down my arm. Right. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, are you going to the doctor? She's like, yeah, like my daughter's going to take me to the doctor later this week. I'm like, okay, good. And she's like, but I went and I saw my rheumatologist, and this woman has had arthritis for years and years, y'all, like for as long as I've known her, which is going on now like 20 years. And she's had arthritis like the whole time. She's also had multiple joint replacements. So we're talking like hips, knees. She's had multiple surgeries on her back. This woman kind of lives in pain and is very used to living in pain. But she's telling me about her most recent doctor's appointment. And she says that the doctor is showing her this scan of her back, and he's showing her and kind of pointing out to her some new like fuzzy matter on the scan, on this x-ray. And she's looking at it and he's like, do you see this? Do you see this? And she's like, yeah, what is that? And he's like, that's arthritis. So I'm like, oh, you have arthritis now in your back, which is a new development for her, right? And she's like, yeah, so now there's arthritis in my back. So I'm hearing all of this and I'm processing all of this. And these are the words that she's telling me. This is the content that she's telling me, that it hurts when she tries to wipe down counters. It hurts when she picks up a broom. She now has arthritis in her back. She has doctor's appointment to try to take care of it. And I can also see in the context of the situation how just completely filthy her house is. And so I hear all of this, right? I hear all of the content of that. And I go to lay down that night with my husband and I say, hey, tomorrow morning we have to get up. We have to clean your mom's house. And he says, yes. And that's what we do the next morning. We get up and we clean the house, like deep, deep clean, like mopping multiple times, like cleaning out the kitchen, like wiping down counters, doing the dishes, moving furniture to get under the sofa where my niece and nephew have left, half-eaten apples and things, right? Things that happen when you have kids, small children in a home and no one is able to do the regular cleaning, right? So we do all of that. And towards the end of the day, this like day of cleaning, I'm in the kitchen, like putting things away. And she says to me, in all the years you have known me, you've never had to come to my house and do this much work. And I had to really pause and take that in, right? Because, people don't always ask for the help they need in the way that we want them to, right? And I already told you all, like, I'm a millennial. I'm a very direct communicator. I would have loved it if this near 70-year-old woman had said, like, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. Can you help me clean my house while I'm here? But she's not going to say that. That's not the perspective. That is not the point of view that she comes from. She comes from being very proud. She comes from not sharing emotions, not sharing pain. And so what she says to me is, there's arthritis in my back. My hand hurts, right? But what I was able to hear in that is, hey, I need help. I'd be so grateful if you cleaned my house. And then the next day I cleaned her house and she says, thank you, right? I could choose to hear the thank you in that, even though what she said was, you've never had to do this for me before. Okay. So what I want you to notice here is that in the way that she was communicating, I could have chosen not to hear what she needed, but instead I was able to tune into what she needs. And that's an intentional thing. And that's what I mean when I say listening for alignment, right? Because the content was that her body hurt. The context was She's not physically able to do it. She's in pain. The context is there's an able-bodied person, me, who's there, who loves her. The context is she would never want to trouble me to do that or take care of her, right? And so inside that content and that context, I can tune into that and choose to hear, right, the language of a baby boomer and translate it into the language of a very direct Brooklyn millennial, right? Because she's not going to tell me like that she feels ashamed or that she is sad that she can't do these things or all of those things, right? I'm not going to get that emotional language. But what I am going to get is I have arthritis in my back now, right? And so this is what I mean when I say really listening for alignment, right? Listening for alignment means we can listen to how people express their needs in their own language and still allow them to be heard, right? Because the important part isn't how they say it. The important part is how we hear it, right? Can you allow someone to be heard in their own language, right? So that's the first thing, right? That's listening for alignment. And inside of that, right, she was immensely grateful, right? The other thing, the next thing, right? So that was my first point, right? Listening for alignment. We're doing so good, y'all. The next thing that I wanted to kind of explore with you all was this idea of polydialectal awareness, right? Because I can choose to be aware of multiple dialects that exist inside the English language, right? I can choose to do that translation and let her truth be spoken in her language and still heard in my language, right? We speak different dialects of the same language. My dialect tends to be more emotional forward, more direct, right? More low context. Her dialect tends to be more high context, right? I got to listen and read and listen in between the lines, if you will, right? For low context speaking or low context communication. But that's a choice to notice that we speak two different dialects of English and then being aware of that and choosing to hear anyway, right? Because she said, I need help. Then I cleaned her house. And then she said, thank you, right? That was the conversation. But it's only because I had the sense and the humility to do that translation work from one dialect to the other that communication could even happen, right? So that's what I mean, right? Polydialectal awareness, really listening for what someone needs instead of for what they're saying, right? It has to go beyond the content of what someone's words are. Instead, I'm listening for the context of her age, the relationship we have, the context of her pain, her trauma, her needs, her emotional fluency. All of that has to be heard as well in order for me to hear her unmet needs and hear what she's saying. Okay. Which this takes me to level 3 listening. Now, I am a professional certified coach, right? I've been a coach for a really, really long time, even before I got coach trained, right? Or officially got like fancy letters after my name that say I took a class on coaching. But one thing that I love about coaching is all about becoming a professional listener. And the Coactive Training Institute, which is a really popular, really well-known coach training program, they teach this concept of level 3 listening, right? And the best way I can explain it is that level 1 listening is like listening to respond, right? It's listening so you can like say what you want to say. It's listening where you're like ready to like jump in and get your 2 cents in, right? Then you have like level 2 listening, right? If you take it up a notch, now you're noticing body language. You're looking for tone of voice, tonality, right? So it's a little bit more listening for the context of what someone's saying, but it's still really wrapped around words, right? Level 3 listening is the one that I think is the most helpful for interpersonal relationships and dynamics, because level 3 listening is when now we're listening for the other person's truth, which means we're listening for visceral context, for spiritual. We're listening for shifts in energy when someone says something. We're hearing the sadness, the grief, the pain, right? Inside of what someone is expressing to us, just as we might be listening for the joy, the elation, right? The excitement in what someone is expressing to us. And then we choose to meet them there because we have this additional context, okay? That's level 3 listening. In order to listen at level 3, you do have to let go of your ego, right? Because if you are triggered, if you are too focused on how what someone else is saying is making you feel, you can't actually hear how what they're saying makes them feel, right? which means you have to let go of the need to be right in a conversation. You have to let go of your own opinions to be just open to what someone else is trying to express to you, right? To really take in all of what someone is communicating. Because again, very little of it has to do with the words, and so much of it has to do with the feeling that someone is trying to translate to you, right? Someone is trying to tell you that they need something, okay? So that is level 3 listening. And the goal with level 3 listening is to really have the other person be heard. That's it, right? Because if you want people to align with you, you have to align with them. And the only way someone knows you're aligned with them is if you can prove that you care. And the best way to show that you care is to actually hear them, which means you have to listen to their own truth louder than your own truth, right? So all of this to say, right? In order for that to happen as leaders, that does require a good humility, right? You do have to surrender to this idea that you don't know anything and allow yourself to be open to receiving someone else's expression, right? Someone else's truth, someone else's story, someone else's lived experience, someone else's context. That is a different kind of listening than just listening to what someone's words are saying, right? I've been doing this work a long time. In 2020, I got a lot of phone calls where people were frantic trying to figure out what to say in response to collective world trauma, right? It was COVID-19 lockdown. People were like isolated in so many ways. George Floyd had been murdered. There was a racial reckoning happening across the globe, and people, leaders were calling me like, Marie, what do I say? And I was like, this is such a huge faux pas, because to make people feel comforted, to make people feel valued, it's not about what you say, it's about the quality of how you listen. Are you able to listen to what people are needing despite the words they are saying, right? That is what we need leaders to do, is to actually listen, to see and to hear people beyond the surface of the content. Can you listen for context, which requires an ear for intercultural fluency? It requires an ear for historical context. It requires an ear for feeling into power dynamics, relationship dynamics, right? Understanding political dynamics, right? Not just global political, but local, thinking about workplace politics, right? We have to be taking all of that context into account in order to hear people so that they feel heard, right? Because when people feel heard, what that does, it creates opportunity for trust to happen, right? That is where trust happens, when people know you are hearing them, you are intentionally listening to them, you are seeing them in the fullness of who they are and how they express in the world. Okay. So those are my 3 nuggets for y'all. Now, I said there were going to be tangents. I feel like I got through that very, very quickly. And unfortunately, no one's joining us live as I'm like giving this to you. But again, if you have comments, if you are finding that like this is hitting you, if this resonates with your own experience, if as I'm sharing, you're like, oh my gosh, that's how I relate to my dad, my uncle, my friend, or thinking about ways this shows up for you in your workplace, please do comment. I will come back and respond to those things. Of course, please like and share this video if you know someone who's had an experience like this, or someone who needs to hear some of these ideas around listening for alignment, right? How do we get into alignment? Okay. And I say it in my workshops all the time. I do a lot of teaching around communication skills, right? How to influence people, how to tell stories, how to build trust, building up your personal brand, all of these things. And I always ask my learners, my students, I always ask them, okay, well, what's the trick or the shortcut for getting people to think that you care? I'll ask you right now, what's the shortcut for getting people to think that you care? What do you think it is? You can drop it in the comments. Let me know. I'll give you like 5 seconds to guess. That was like 5 seconds, right? The trick is to care. You have to actually care. And I know those of you who watched my live with Chris Irwin about a week ago, we talked about collaboration in and amongst workplace complexity. And so much of that has to do with curiosity, right? And stoking the fires of curiosity. But the way that you let people think you care is you have to care. And if you don't care, then I really encourage you to get curious about that. Right? That is a place to look, as they say in the coaching world. But you have to get curious about other people in order to actually hear what they're needing underneath what they are saying. And that is the key to building trust, to activating influence, for activating power structures, right? That allow people to come together, collaborate, and change the world in that ripple effect that I was talking to you about before. Okay. Again, if this is hitting you in your feels, let me know. Okay. I would love to hear your thoughts on this idea. I would love to hear how you are collaborating and trying to get in alignment with people who maybe it's difficult for you to communicate with. If you've had experiences where you might be a very low context communicator, like very direct Northeast style in the US, right? Kind of communicator. And then maybe you move like I did to the southern part of the US where it is a very high context place where people say things like bless your heart when really what they really mean is like F you. Right? I'm very curious. How are you navigating that? How do you learn how to communicate and really align with how others are speaking so that they can be heard and vice versa? Okay. So let me know what resonated from this conversation, what you would like to hear more of. I will be back on this channel next week for another live conversation. I'm going to do these on Tuesdays through mid-August this year. It'll be a quick run. I think we're doing 7 episodes. So please join us for those conversations. I'm happy to revisit these topics. Next week, I will be solo again. We're going to be exploring the cost of misalignment or misattunement. So really talking about what happens when conversations devolve because people are not hearing each other. So we're going to explore that next week, Tuesday. But please make sure you subscribe. If you want to get notified when I go live, you can hit the notification bell so that you get all of the details and know what's going on with the channel. My name is Marie. Again, I am a leadership coach and author. My forthcoming book, The Art of Conversationship, will be released later this year. If you want to know more about that or go ahead and snag a copy, you can find details about that on my channel information page. So in the description of this channel, you can find details about all of those goodies and what I'm up to in the world. But until that time, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Of course, it lives right here on the YouTubes. So you can watch this conversation. You can also go back and watch the conversation I had with Chris last week, speaking about collaboration and complexity. And you can also learn more about me and the work that I do at High Tides by visiting us on our website, which is hightidesconsulting.co. Okay. I think those are all the goods that are fit to sell or all the news that's fit to print for now. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Remember to like, subscribe, and all of the things. It's free, just like kindness. And I will see you next week out in these internet streets. All right. Bye for now.